Hello, everybody. This is Sophia Mona Lisa from the Golden Ray Center and the Rosewell Mystery School. And we are still in the Inanna Underworld. And we will continue to be in the Inanna Underworld through the rest of this month, April. And so the Gemini Goddess will rise as the evening star on May 3rd. And then it's about 9 days later, she makes her ascent through the first gate. So that will begin a whole new phase in the Venus synodic cycle that we will focus on as the ascent journey. So today, what we're going to look at is we're going to see what's going to be happening in the sky on that May 3rd date when the Gemini Goddess rises as the evening star out of the Inanna Underworld. And it's really interesting to me that it's happening coinciding with the Beltane festivals. So that's pretty spectacular. And of course, this time of year is very auspicious for Maureen and I, because I guess it was 5 or 6 years ago, I'm losing track, when we all met for the goddess gathering up in North Carolina for our emergence ceremonies.
Yeah, I believe it was 2018.
2018, so 19, 20, 21. Oh, it's only been 3 years?
No, it's been 4. It has to have been 4. Maybe it was, yeah.
Yeah, okay, then this year would be the 4th year. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just feels like it was much longer ago than that. So anyhow, Beltane is a really fun time to celebrate. And for those in the Western world over here, we associate that celebration with May Day and dancing around the maypole, which is also a very auspicious time for me, because when I was 7 years old, I was voted to be the May Queen of my elementary school and got to ride in the parade on the back of a Corvette. That was
wow.
That was really exciting for a 7-year-old.
Exactly.
So we have a lot to talk about because we really have been worked during this Inanna Underworld journey, and it feels like it's been 2 months, not 1 month, maybe even longer. It feels like longer since our last Sacred Feminine class. It's just, I keep telling Maureen, I feel like the tar baby that's just fighting myself, can't get out of the tar. So we've got a big agenda for today, and we're adding a new piece that Leela has kindly offered for us to initiate our classes with a grounding meditation before we do the spiritual protection, the spiritual fortification, and open sacred space. So we will go ahead now and allow Leela to offer us with this grounding meditation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So inviting you to close your eyes if it feels right. And starting to notice your breath. Becoming aware of how your breath rises and falls in the body. No need to control or change. Place of allowing. Feeling as it rises and fills you up. And with each exhale, letting go. Sending your energy down. Sending it down through your legs, through the soles of your feet. Allowing your breath to guide this energy down as the weight of the body continues to soften And as it continues to drop down through the soles of the feet, you may envision or sense or feel roots like those of a tree reaching down from your feet, deep down into the layers of the earth, continuing to follow this with your breath, sensing as these roots go deep, deep, deep into the earth, grounding and connecting you into the earth. Deep into the heart of Gaia, our beloved mother. Taking a moment to connect here. What does this feel like? To be held, to be supported, to be nourished by the earth. Can you allow yourself to surrender to it? Breathing this in, this abundance, this vital life force energy. Grounded, present. And from this place, starting to breathe this up into your body, up through the layers, up through these roots, the roots of your own body, the place where you are always connected to the earth. You are of the earth. As you breathe this up, feeling it rising up through your legs and taking some breaths into your belly. Feeling this creative life force from the earth filling us up. Allowing the breath to continue to expand. And as the energy starts to rise up into the heart, taking a couple breaths here into the heart. Giving thanks for this physical body, this body temple, for this opportunity to connect and to remember how deeply supported and held we are in each and every moment. Giving thanks. And when it feels right, coming back into the space, opening your eyes and arriving back into this beautiful circle. Deeply embodied, connected, grounded.
Thank you so much for that. That feels really good.
Yes. Thank you.
So
That's
welcome.
beautiful. Thank you.
So I'm going to surprise Maureen here, and I'm going to invite her to establish our spiritual protection, our spiritual fortification. And the reason why is because I'm actually going to open the sacred space, and I'll explain that when we get to that piece. So just allowing us to share the wealth here and allow Maureen to take the stage to guide us in this piece.
Spiritual. I need to get my work. Okay, I'll be right back.
Sure, no problem.
We establish the spiritual protection of the goddess Diana. Diana's armor is of the archetype, the Amazon protectress. It is fortification. She wears the helmet of the golden eagle, which enables her to see from the high perspective of the eagle. She has wings that call us to the grandeur of our souls with courage and resolution. With wings, we can fly above the lower energies to freedom. She is surrounded with a belt of the strength of truth. She wears arm shields that protect from all beliefs that do not come from the expression of our sovereignty. It is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. She wears the breastplate, which protects the heart, and foremost protects with love, honesty, and faith. She has the shoes that allow her to stride forth, knowing that we have the wisdom to walk the path of peace, to enter on ease and not stray from the direction we know to be right for us. She has the armor or the arrows of the most prominent arrow maker of her era. They are strong and they are straight. They are an offensive weapon, discerning of truth and protecting us from all who would mislead for evil purposes. We are fortified.
That was really spectacular.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, this is the work that Maureen has done since we first started talking about the Ephesians piece that talks about the armor of God.
Yes.
And that letter that was written to the citizens of Ephesus. That was really fantastic. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it was so interesting to find that Diana was behind that myth, that story of the armor of God. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so that brings us to opening sacred space. And for those of you who are not aware, tomorrow night is the first night of the spring Navaratri. We'll talk about Navaratri a little bit on the next couple of slides. But essentially, it's the 9 auspicious nights of worshiping the Universal Mother in the form of the goddess Durga. So on the first night, we honor Ma Shalputri, and her name has to do with the fact that she is the daughter of Lord Himalaya. Many who say that the Himalayas are the abode, the celestial abode of Lord Shiva. And so Shalputri means the daughter of mountains. And so there are many mantras that are available when you're doing puja, sacred service to Ma Shalputri. This is an excerpt from one. I didn't want to make it too long because they can become very lengthy. And in fact, the first line of this mantra is oftentimes recited 108 times with the japa mala. In and of itself is very powerful. So I'm going to go ahead and recite this mantra, and I'm going to go through it 3 times. I'm not going to chant it because you do not want to hear my voice, but I will speak it out. Om Devi Shalputrayai Namaha. Sarva Swarupe Sarvashe. Sarva Shakti Samanvite. Baya Bayastrahi No Devi. Durga Devi Namostute. Om Devi Shalputraye Namaha. Sarva Swarupe Sarvashe. Sarva Shakti Samanvite. Baya Bayastrahi No Devi. Durga Devi Namostute. Om Devi Shalputraye Namaha. Sarva Swarupe Sarvashe. Sarva Shakti Samanvite. Baya Bayastrahi No Devi. Durga Devi Namostute. So I invite each of you to take the next 9 days, 9 nights and 10 days to invoke the different Durga avatars as we go through this spring Navaratri. And then, of course, the Navaratri happens again in the fall. What's really interesting is when you're doing the Navaratri, the first 3 nights are dedicated to Mahakali and her forms of Durga. The second set of 3 nights is devoted to Mahalakshmi and her 3 forms of Durga. And the last 3 nights are devoted to Maha Saraswati and her 3 forms of Durga. And for the devotee, the bhakti, who is doing these worships, on the 5th night of Navaratri, it's a very auspicious night, you can receive a blessing, a boon from Mahalakshmi. And in fact, I myself have experienced this in the past, and on the resource page, I will put a link to a blog that I wrote about that experience that I had with Mahalakshmi many years ago for you to read and to share in. So we see that this month of April is a really big month energetically. And of course, we started with the Easter weekend. And if we remember back to March, it was March 25th, 26th, I believe, when the Venus-Sun conjunction occurred that marked the Inanna resurrection. So, within a week later, we have the Easter weekend that also is a celebration of resurrection energies. And whether you believe the Christian myth about Easter, the Christian story about Easter or not, or celebrate it or not, because there is such a large percentage of the collective consciousness of humanity that is focused on this Easter story, the portal for these resurrection energies opens. And I myself was very aware over that weekend and even into the following week that the Sophia Christ energies that were pouring in through the portal at that time were more intense than I've ever experienced. And perhaps that's because it was happening during this Inanna Underworld journey associated with Inanna's own resurrection. And of course, the resurrection that is happening within each one of us. And so I was really surprised and delighted to receive a text message from Leela on Easter Day regarding her own recognition of what was happening on the planet at that time. And I'd like to give Leela an opportunity to speak to that now.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I noticed that, it started for me, I think it started actually on Friday, and I could just feel like an increase in energy, which also was simultaneously a feeling of like exhaustion, but a different kind of, like, not just fully exhaustion, just like my body felt, I don't know, it's hard to explain, that it was a connection to a higher frequency that was integrating into my body, which I know from previous experiences with this, that sometimes when a higher frequency is coming into my body, I can feel it as like a density, or it is moving into new places, like it's like a rewiring, if that makes sense. And so I started to feel that, and by Sunday, I was in a full bliss state. I was just in this place of, I just felt that the energy of what was coming through was so just crystalline, is the word that comes through. And to be able to receive that felt like such a gift. Like, I just felt it through my cellular structure. I felt it into my bones. I felt it on my skin. And it was like this high, what it felt like was the awakening of this Christ consciousness, but it also did really feel like the merging of the sacred union of masculine and feminine, of the Sophia and the Christ. And that a new, so what I'm looking for, this new sort of portal, if we will, opened to be able to increase how much of this energy was available to be felt on a greater scale at this time for the consciousness. That, and to be able to be open to that, and for those who were aligning with that vibration, to help to be the stewards to bring that down into earth and into the greater humanity.
Absolutely. That's exactly how I intuited it as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And
powerful.
Yeah, it is. It was very powerful. It was very powerful. And for me, it was a little bit of a different experience. And I was talking to Maureen about it earlier in the last week, or in the middle of last week. For me, because the frequency was so high, that the way that I experienced it was, back in the 60s when I was a little girl, we had these toys that were metal tops, and you had a pump on the top of it, and you'd pump the top of it, and then this top would go spinning around the room. And that's how I felt, like I was spinning and spinning and spinning. And what I became aware of is that because the frequencies that were coming in were so high, that what was really happening for myself and for others is that whatever center of balance we have become accustomed to in order to be able to walk on this planet in 3D has been completely, and is actually still being completely recalibrated, that we're having to come to this place where we're finding this whole new center of balance that in and of itself is of a higher frequency, and dare I say, even a higher dimensional center of balance. And so it was just like, whoa. How do I hold all of this within me? And really, you know, the word that I was using at the time, really feeling energetically slammed and spun out. And so fortunately, I've been able to find a bit of balance since then. What about you, Maureen? How did you experience that portal?
I always experience Easter the same. It's through the eyes of the human, not those that witness, but him, Jesus, as a human being going through something not sacrificial, but understanding that it was something that was meant for him. It was his past. And he was prepared to do that, even though it was a very fearsome thing to face. And I always remember the night he went up on the mountain to pray, to prepare for this ordeal, and feeling fear. And who wouldn't? As a human, he knew it was going to be a very terrible experience. I always remember that, and remember the courage that he and his mother Mary and Mary Magdalene all experienced on that day, all of them. And as he said, the last thing he said on the cross, it is done. And I can imagine the relief and the beauty of that moment for him. I did it. And now I can go on with my destiny. And I always experience that moment. It gives me strength.
Yeah.
A little different than most people.
Yeah. And it's all perfect because we know that the Sophia Christ consciousness is manifesting through each of us, and there are infinite ways in which it can manifest itself. And so it's enjoying that experience through you.
Yeah. And I know I am always struck by the serenity that I believe Mary Magdalene and the Mother Mary expressed during that time. And I remember when I saw the Pietà, when I walked into the Vatican, thinking that there was no possible hope of feeling a feminine energy there. And yet the first thing you see is the Pietà, which is Mary holding Jesus when he came down from the cross. The look on her face, it's amazing. It is not anguish. It's just love. That's all. And I believe that's what that was meant to convey. And that is the energy that greets you when you come into that bastion of patriarchy. You know, it's amazing. Really is.
I love that word serenity that you used, and I'm actually going to refer back to that a little bit further on. I'm going to make a mental note when I get to that point that I'm thinking of right now to draw back on that. So you can see there that there are some really significant aspects happening this month that you can allow yourself to tune into. The first is on April 16, when we have this Sun square Pluto aspect. And so, you know, squares are opportunities for breakthroughs in consciousness. And it just so happens that this particular square is occurring about 2.5 weeks prior to Venus rising as the evening star. And so for me personally, what this aspect represents is a part of the Inanna Underworld journey being on this side of the resurrection point. Is it has to do with what you're going to hear me talk about later in terms of the rise of the Phoenix. This is the point where the Phoenix begins to rise from the pile of ashes of all that has been burned to the ground, all of the dross that has been burned to the ground within each of us, within the planet, within the collective consciousness through this Inanna Underworld journey. And so here we have, let's just say, the Phoenix starting to poke its head out from that pile of ashes as it begins to take the next 2.5 weeks to come out of that pile of ashes and then rises in the sky as the evening star. April 25th, another huge square, Saturn squaring Venus and Mercury. And so be very aware of a couple of things that the cosmic messenger here in Taurus, remember Taurus being the sign of embodiment within this sacred vessel that we call our bodies. Couple of things. One, a communication from the sacred feminine about how this embodiment of the Phoenix that is rising within you is manifesting through you. And the other thing is, this is happening after this spring Navaratri. I don't know how many times through the Venus synodic cycle in the Inanna Underworld phase, we experience Easter and the spring Navaratri together. To me, that would be a fascinating research project to find out, you know, how frequently does this happen or how infrequently does this happen. But I'm aware that there is something uniquely special about these events happening at this particular time on this side of the Venus resurrection point. And so think about, too, what kind of messages you may be receiving from the Universal Mother in terms of how she is being resurrected within us, within the planet, within the collective consciousness of humanity. So a couple of things could be coming through to you at that time. And then at the end of the month, Pluto is beginning another vision quest. We completed a vision quest with Pluto in January, And now here Pluto is starting another vision quest. And you'll notice that it's very, very close to the Pluto return point for the United States of America. And we'll talk about that in the next couple of slides. And so this retrograde, this vision quest is taking us from now, right before we come out of this Inanna Underworld, right before the Phoenix rises and the evening star rises, through the end of this year, which is the remainder of this Gemini Goddess synodic cycle, and into January of next year, when we're still in that metamorphic underworld phase before the Capricorn goddess comes onto the world stage. So this is huge because this is happening in Capricorn, and I believe that it is going to be giving us a kind of a foreshadowing of what that Capricorn goddess on the world stage is going to be about, and also a kind of a foreshadowing around what's happening with this country with its Pluto return next year. So these are the really big things that are happening this month, right before the May 3rd event of Venus rising as evening star, meaning she has come just beyond. And I mean, I've got like 1 minute beyond that 10-degree orb that indicates on either side that she's in the Inanna Underworld. Is there anything that either of you would like to speak to regarding either these two squares or this new Pluto Vision Quest that we're going to be going into? Okay.
No, good.
So before we get into what I was just speaking about in more depth, let's look at what's happening here in the heavens. We just had our new moon yesterday in Aries, and we're going to be having a full moon at the end of the month in Scorpio. Isn't that interesting that the day after we have the full moon, Pluto begins his vision quest? And of course, Pluto is the Lord of Scorpio. So this will be something to really feel into in terms of the consciousness that's being that is being illuminated for you at that time around these Scorpio energies, and even in terms of what this Pluto Vision Quest could be about. We see here that I've moved a bunch of stuff off and have added a bunch of stuff on. And so we'll talk about some of these things that'll be happening in May coming up next month. But this is the big thing, the big piece for this month. And you see it takes us almost to the end of next January. And we see that metamorphic underworld phase ends on January 29th. The vision quest is complete 2 days before. To me, this is absolutely fascinating in terms of the timing of it and the blending of these energies during that phase. Okay, so before we get into the meat of this next activation point, we want to go ahead and take some time to do some closure on the resurrection of Inanna that happened March 25th and 26th. And what became very clear to me as I've been going through and receiving lots of information during this period is that there are many, many aspects of the sacred feminine that are becoming resurrected within us. And while I may experience one aspect and the two of you may be experiencing other aspects, what I know for sure is that what I'm experiencing is happening within everybody, and what the two of you are experiencing is happening within everybody. We are a unified field. And so it's interesting to see which pieces of the sacred feminine are making themselves known to us individually in its resurrection. So, Maureen, I loved how you talked about the fact that you were aware that your creative self was being resurrected. And I spoke to you about the fact that that's one of the aspects of the Gemini Goddess, the creative muse. And so would you like to take some time to speak to that and how you've been experiencing that and any information you've received around it?
Oh, you know, I've actually been through a rather dry period. It's hard to explain, actually, but I have not felt the closeness at this point to my creative self or my muse. I'm feeling very much in the underworld and very, very heavy, and I'm working through it, but it is not a particularly gratifying time for me. I know what I want to do. You know, I want to be more creative. But right now I'm feeling not very comfortable here in the underworld. And that's unusual for me. I generally am not feeling strong energy in the underworld like I have this time. And so the fact that, you know, I'm off the cross, so to speak, and experiencing a renewal, it hasn't been clear to me what this is yet. I'm just kind of fuzzy.
I absolutely understand that and completely validate that for you as a part of the process. And it was just really exciting when you became aware of her at the point that we were discussing that. Since that time, have any other aspects of the sacred feminine made themselves known to you in terms of how they're being resurrected within you?
It's all about Ereshkigal at this point. I have been listening to the legend, understanding the legend that Ereshkigal was, shall we say, jealous, that she felt to be lesser than Inanna, and she had lost a lot and she was feeling it. And it wasn't until the two beings came and validated her feelings that she began to feel whole again. She needed to be validated in the legend by, I can't remember the names of the two beings that were there, and helped to make her feel that her feelings, that how she was dealing with what was happening was very important, just as important as anything. And so it is through her, I think it's through her awareness that I am experiencing the underworld more than Inanna. I feel more of a connection to Ereshkigal and understanding the darkness that she feels, and feeling that that maybe God has overlooked her in some way, in favor of the goddess of Inanna. And I understand what she's feeling, but she is now uniting. They are coming together as a whole. And so that's where I am in the underworld, is looking at this from her point of view. How do I become one again with my lighter side, which is Inanna, and become whole, both merged, just like the beautiful drawing there. They are merging. It's important.
It's very important. And it's fascinating to me that you're having this experience because someone needs to speak for Ereshkigal in terms of how she is experiencing her own resurrection as this healing and this unification is taking place, because we know, we've discussed that this time, different than other journeys in the past, that Inanna and Ereshkigal, once they've had this healing, will be ascending from the underworld together. And so you with this Scorpio goddess overtone, you with a Scorpio ascendant have been chosen by Ereshkigal to tell her story in terms of how it feels for her as this healing is taking place, how this unification is taking place, how she is experiencing her own resurrection, which is allowing her to ascend from the underworld in wholeness and unity with Inanna. So I'll be really fascinated to hear from you what it is that she has to say, because this is a voice that we haven't heard from in 5,000 plus years.
Yeah, she's been pretty much ignored as something not good that Inanna had to overcome in order to leave the underworld. I don't see that. I mean, I'm very much in her corner, I guess I could say. As a Scorpio rising, I see the dark, and I honor it.
Right. And I think it's a really good segue into what Leela described. She described that she was experiencing the resurrection of the solar feminine, and how it's really important for people to understand that we have the solar feminine, we have the lunar feminine, and just like the yin yang symbol, they too must have an integration of it and the balance between the two. And so you could even say that what you are experiencing as Ereshkigal's resurrection has to do with that lunar feminine energy, whereas Leela has really been experiencing the resurrection of the solar feminine energy. So would you like to speak to that, Leela?
Yes. So, yeah, thank you for everything you shared, Maureen. I was really feeling that. For me, so much of all of this has been about integration. It's been about not casting any part aside within myself or even within humanity. Being in this underworld phase of being able to see all of it, all of the parts that seem not as, they're the shadow aspects that sometimes don't feel that good to bring into the equation, but it's like everything exists here, and how important that is for this place of full-on integration. And when I tune into this, the energy of the solar feminine, it really is coming into a full empowerment and embodiment of our true essence of who we are. And it's this place where, to me, it feels like so much of what has been repressed within the feminine, you know, the feminine embodied in women, but just in the feminine in general, because there has been just this one aspect of the feminine for thousands of years that has been acceptable. The part of us that's the mother, the wife, the nurturer, the caregiver, and all of these are beautiful qualities. And we are so much more than that. We are also, you know, priestesses, we are witches, we are medicine women, we are so many things, leaders, and to claim on this part of ourselves, to see where the wounds lie, these places of perhaps not feeling good enough or not belonging or whatever those wounds places are, and being able to see them and bring them in, you know, into a place of wholeness within us. And it's not saying that they have to disappear, but it's that awareness of these pieces of ourselves, so that they don't stop us from really fully being in our radiance. And that's what it feels like for me. It's such a huge piece for me of how, if we could all live in our radiance and we could all illuminate our true soul essence, and we could be in our gifts. And it doesn't have to be so that like everybody's kind of bigger than life. I mean, there's that aspect, but it's this place of, we all have a unique place to, a piece to play in this journey that we're on together, that we've come to bring into being. And so when we can really allow that space and to step into that, that's what really feels important for me. And so that's this place of resurrection within me, of being, of seeing what holds me back and still stepping forward, seeing these old stories, these old hooks, these places, and still deciding, you know, choosing, yes, I'm going to continue to walk forward. And it might feel a little challenging sometimes and new and a little unsteady, and yet, you know, there's something greater that's calling me forward. And it's like the evolution of our humanity. And you know, that's been really real for me, of this, like, how can we be the way showers, we be these lighthouses for creating this new way of being, this new world.
Oh, yeah. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, very, very powerful. But of course, then it's a very potent time right now, the perfect storm, so to speak, for this kind of power to come forth. So for myself, I had two aspects reveal themselves to me. And the first one was the goddess Sekhmet. And that was really surprising when she stepped forward to me, to speak to me. And in fact, I think, Maureen, didn't I say to you something about Sekhmet even being, Sekhmet and Mercury were in Pisces at the time of that activation. They were conjunct in Pisces. So no wonder she took the opportunity to speak to me. But, you know, I've always tried to take these myths about the goddesses, and which are in many ways very disempowering, because the myths have been told through patriarchy, to find the flip side, the empowered side. And Sekhmet for so long has been identified as this raging feminine energy that was so out of control that they had to flood the fields with beer and have her become, you know, drop into a drunken stupor in order to be able to control her and to keep her from eating all of humanity. I mean, what a horrific way to be identified. for all the years that the Magdalene was identified as the prostitute. This is not who these energies are. And so while I thought, okay, well, let's call her the goddess of equity and atonement, that's at least a higher frequency than the drunken, raging, feminine. She made it very clear that she does not want to in any way be identified with that energy anymore, and that she is and has been the goddess of grace and mercy, and that it's time for people to be able to see her as that aspect of the mother energy. And it was, I just as you, Maureen, talked about how you're feeling from Ereshkigal's side, I could feel Sekhmet's energy around this. I mean, think about all of the times that we have been falsely accused, we have been falsely judged, we have had assumptions laid at our feet that have nothing to do with us, and how badly that makes us feel. And this is the energy that she was coming from. And, I am not that, I am not owning that, and I will not acknowledge that anymore. So if you're coming to me, then this is how I expect to be approached. And of course, that sounds like her energy, doesn't it? She's very, she's that protective mother energy. This is it. And beyond this place, you will not step. And so that was very powerful for me to hear from her, that she's being resurrected within all of us as the goddess of grace and mercy. And then the next piece was very surprising, because this piece happened on March 30th. So after the resurrection activation and before the portal of the Easter weekend, before having the experience of those Sophia Christ consciousness energies coming in such a powerful way. And then Yeshua spoke to me and he said to me, yes, I am, the embodiment of Christ consciousness. And yes, I am that energy of pure, unconditional love. He said, but it's not about me externally. It's about the Christ consciousness within each of us. And so he's explained to me that that the Yeshua within us, which I know can be very triggering for some people to hear, because there are still a lot of people on the planet that believe that they cannot talk to God directly, that they have to go through Jesus Christ, their Savior, to be able to talk to God. So this can be a very triggering piece of awareness that I'm sharing. But he said, this Christ consciousness energy is being resurrected within each of us so that we can stand in that frequency of the Christ consciousness energy, and we can see ourselves in wholeness. And this is what's got to happen. Until we can see ourselves in wholeness, we cannot allow for everything else that is out there, because we keep playing this separation game. And so this is a huge part of this Gemini Goddess journey that we talked about in the personal sessions, the first or second class, I can't remember, maybe the third class, when we said, this rainbow goddess is represented by our chakra system. It's represented by the corpus callosum that bridges the left brain and the right brain, and how we are taking this energy and we are bridging it through the rainbow goddess so that we can come up here beyond the polarity, beyond the duality, into that source field, the frequency of that source field, and be able to see from this place of wholeness. It's no surprise to me that Yeshua took this opportunity to say, this is how this energy is being resurrected through this Inanna Underworld journey at this time, to facilitate us as we go through the ascent journey, to go from here slowly, slowly, slowly up to here, where we will end at the soul star chakra before we go into the metamorphic underworld journey. So this has been really powerful, a powerful time for me in terms of receiving all kinds of clarity and ahas around what is happening in terms of the metamorphosis. And I know that that's not the politically correct term for this phase, but really that is in fact happening within us so that we can bridge and ascend above this level of duality and polarity within us. And there's still more to come. I mean, we have from now until May 3rd for these resurrecting pieces within us to speak to us, to get our attention, to make us aware of them. So I invite you and I encourage you to continue to tap in and hear from these places. And as I said before, these two squares on April 16th and on April 25th will be really good opportunities to hear from within how that piece of yourself in the multidimensional realm, which is the Aquarius energies, that Saturn will be in when that happens, when those squares happen, are showing up. Is there anything about that that either of you would like to speak to?
So much. I mean, yeah, I think we're all going through this in a very, through our own lens, but in a very similar way. Like so much of what you spoke to is what I've been experiencing just through my own lens, and that this is all about bringing things back into unity. Like there's this wholeness piece is huge, and the Sekhmet piece, she's been coming to me a lot lately because I also feel that she has been misunderstood and misrepresented because of her fierceness, and that's the solar feminine. Because there's a need for fierceness, and fierceness doesn't need to be aggression. And I think that's where there is this piece where we are afraid of conflict or afraid of aggression because of warring and what has been shown in our society over thousands of years. But there's a fierceness to be able to say no, to be able to speak up, to use our voice, to speak our truth, and to stand up for what we believe in. And that fierce protector who, if somebody's going to, like the lion, right? It's like, you think about the energy of the lion, and it's how it's needed. And the mother, there's a fierceness to be able to protect the mother. And so I'm just really feeling that within myself, because there's a part of my own denying of that part of me that's really needing to come into alignment, because it is a part of me. And the more that I'm able to fully step into that, there's an integration that happens. It's not just like, oh, I just need to make sure that everything's okay and I can't, it's like the old suppression and oppression of women. And that's really this piece for me of just that, to not be scared of our power, to not be scared of my power. And that's just been, that's what I feel for when I connect with Sekhmet. Like I feel Sekhmet in my solar plexus. I'm just like, whew, Yes.
Yeah, and you know it that's where Egypt sees her too.
Yeah.
In the temple of Sekhmet, it's the solar plexus where she resides. It's real interesting
Yeah.
that you said that. Yeah.
That's one of the most powerful places that I've been. And I know you've been there too, Maureen, just to be at her
Yes.
feet in that temple and just to feel her presence,
Oh,
emanating. It's just
yes.
like, that moment in time will be with me forever. And
Oh my, me too. I was just absolutely um, taken to the ground, was on my knees. I could not believe what I was feeling. I mean, I didn't know much about the legend at all when I went to Egypt. I went to
mm,
learn. And so when I felt her, she was the strongest energy I felt.
yeah,
It just took me to my knees. I
there's
had
like
to
this,
be,
yeah, sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, go
You,
ahead.
I was just gonna say that I felt like that there was this like unwaveringness with her. She's just like, I know who I
Mhm,
am, and here I am.
mhm,
And there's just like something that's so to be faced, to be mirrored with that is so profound. It's like,
mhm.
oh, wow, that I don't actually need to hide. That it's okay to be, to be fully visible and yeah, it's just so powerful.
It was. It is. Mm.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so what I'll say just to kind of wrap this up is while it was the Yeshua within that spoke to me about how that energy is being resurrected within us, let's remember that Yeshua's beloved partner is the Magdalene, and she too is being resurrected within us. And so I invite her for myself to speak to me about how she's experiencing that. And if either of you hear from her around her resurrection experience, I'd love to hear from you on it.
She speaks to me multiple times a day. She's probably the strongest archetype that it was within me, that reawakened in me. She is, yeah, her. It's there's no coincidence that she's come back at this time because it's essential for the rebalancing of the feminine and masculine on the planet for her to be to move from the old stories of her being a prostitute and the way
Mhm,
that she was
mhm,
portrayed
mhm,
to take her rightful place as an equal part of the story, and not just the story but just like that this part of unity, right? That there is, and whether we want to look at it in male and female bodies, but it's also within ourselves that we have the Christ and the Magdalene, that we have these two energies within us, and that both of them are needed and essential for us being able to fully birth a new reality. Like we can't just now it's all feminine and we came from the patriarchal world. It's like the merging of the two, and she really is here for that rising. And a lot of it is coming through an empowerment movement for women as well. This, to me, she's one of the most relatable archetype because she, like the Greek goddesses and the Egyptian goddesses, it's a lot harder to relate to them as a person, because of you have a lion head or you have this, or like the stories are so sensational in this sort of sense. But her, and it wasn't so long ago, there's this place where even what she represents, because it's so much more than her story that we've been taught through the Bible and even the Essene stories and all of this stuff. It's more of her essence is coming back to really to allow us to step more fully into this empowerment. Like she's really here for the empowerment, is what I feel.
Mhm.
Oh, yes, I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. So it's important for us to remember that just as Yeshua is the embodiment of the Christ consciousness energy, the Magdalene is the embodiment of the Sophia consciousness energy.
Mhm.
And I don't think a lot of people really understand the Sophia consciousness. And even when you call it the wisdom piece, the wisdom consciousness, I don't think people really know how to connect with that. It feels more ephemeral because of the fact that it's been so shrouded for so long. And so, I'd like to invite both of you to kind of speak to how do you, in your own, manifestation of that Sophia parenthetical wisdom consciousness, how do you relate to it? How do you experience that moving through you?
Well, my upbringing was unique in the way of I was raised as a Christian Scientist, and that was a religion brought to us from a woman, and her name was Mary Baker Eddy, and she always taught that God is both. That she called it Father, Mother, God. That's the way I was raised. I believe, that God embodied both. That's what she taught. So for me, it wasn't such a leap, to understand the connection between Sophia and Christ consciousness. I didn't call them that, but I was raised to see them in that way. So I guess, that I continue to struggle with the uniting, the bringing them together. But I was raised in a way that's how I saw it. I never saw God as particularly male. And that was important. I mean, she wasn't a woman who subjected herself to anything. She was a very strong woman and a very powerful leader in a time when that was not thought of as proper. I remember Mark Twain was her contemporary, and he just thought she was just way above her station, and he totally disavowed anything that she had to say. But in the end, he had great respect for her. So however she presented herself in the world was very different than most women were taught to do. And he began to respect that. And I think that's in me. I understand that that strength, that feminine strength. So that has been a big help in my bringing the two together.
How about you, Leela? Thank you, Maureen. That's really, I don't think that's a piece about you that I was aware of it before.
No, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't grow up religious in any way. There was a brief moment when we went to the United Church for 1 year, but that didn't last very long, and I was, I think, 11. Whenever I learned about Christianity, it never made sense to me. It felt hollow. It felt like there was something missing. And when I started doing a lot of deep work in my kind of late 20s, I started to realize that I had a deep disconnection to God, or to the masculine form of God, of just like this story that's been perpetuated. And I did a lot of healing through that, and realized like that it actually was an aspect that wasn't masculine or feminine. It was, you know, source energy. It was energy of divine light. And through the practice that I've been doing for 15 to 20 years, it's really just brought that into a deeper awareness. And you know, I really deeply connect with the Sophia wisdom, and because I'm on such a deep divine feminine path, and I also see where they are two halves of the whole, and back to this place of sacred union, where this importance of bringing things back into balance. And I'm realizing that's a huge part of what I'm called to do in this lifetime and that's why I'm so devoted to the divine feminine, is because it's helping to bring that into balance. And so, and from that place, you know, the sacredness of the masculine as well is important. But it's these it just feels that, like you said, Sophia, so beautifully, that it's been shrouded. And so this energy of revealing the true essence of what this is, and that's what feels really important, is this place that there is no masculine or feminine even within this. To me, you know, we understand it in this way of polarity, because the polarity, you know, makes sense, but you know, in the end of it really, or not even at the end, at the beginning, there was no masculine and feminine in the way that I remember it, you know, from my earliest experiences and life. There was no masculine and feminine. There was only divine light. There was only source. And so that to me is the beauty of this, and that we need to see both to be able to find the wholeness within it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I find when I you know, what I've been learning through that, I love, you know, I love the stories, and I love the myths, and I love all of the thing, like, you know, learning all of the things, and there's also sometimes a feeling of limitation within there, because where did the stories come from? Where, you know, they're all coming from a different perspective, which is beautiful, and I take all that in, and then I just come to a place of, how does it feel? For me, that's my sense that I most deeply connect to, is how does it feel for me? Because it's so much more than just a story. It's like this essence, and it really, some of those details really don't matter to me. You know, it's like, what is this vibration that we're wanting to create here on Earth at this time?
Yep.
Oh, yes.
Paving
So,
a new way.
Yes,
mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah. And so I experience it, of course, a little differently, you know, from my own way of how I can experience it, of course. And so when we're talking about Sophia consciousness, wisdom consciousness, I relate that to Gnosticism, that knowing. How do you just know something? And you know it in your bones, and there's no question whatsoever. You know the truth of it. And for me, that's how I experience Sophia consciousness, is when I have total clarity about a piece, no matter how infinitesimal the piece may be in relationship to the eternal whole. I have absolute clarity about that little speck of sand. And so where does that come from? For me, it comes from this Sophia consciousness. And it's hard to delineate it in that way, because when we're talking about unified energy, Sophia Christ consciousness, well, there has to be a calibration with that unified energy, that high frequency of the pure love represented by Yeshua, in order to receive that pure clarity of knowing that then comes through the Sophia consciousness. It's a really hard thing to put words around. And I guess for a lot of people, maybe an easy way to kind of relate to that would be is, you know, if you think about God, Mother, Father, God, Goddess, whatever that is, as being infinite intelligence, then for me, the Sophia wisdom consciousness is that piece. And yet it's more than that, but it's a piece that you can kind of connect to and say, oh, okay, I can experience that. I can relate to that. And then more comes of it. But at least it's a way to try to connect to what that is. And it's a hard thing to connect to, because when people hear about wisdom consciousness, you know, they go back to Solomon. So here you are again in a whole another masculine, you know, representation of consciousness. And so it's tricky. It's tricky to kind of navigate an energy that is a unified energy and try to break it out into pieces to try to understand it. But that's how I've experienced it when I've had those real moments of gnosis.
Mhm.
I've identified that as the Sophia consciousness in terms of how I'm experiencing it. So, is everyone feeling complete about this resurrection point,
Mm-hmm.
this energy? It's been intense and it's continuing, as I said, up until the Phoenix rises.
I kind of love it, I have to say. I'll be really, truly honest. I love it. I love the depth. But I signed up for this, you know, I'm just like, I'm so, I mean, how perfect that we're now. And, you know, I've been in this Aries energy. And for me, the momentum of the transition of springtime, it takes a couple weeks. But with this Aries new moon, there's like a momentum that's really different that I can feel. And it's just like my own fire within me of just, of like, yeah, okay. Like I can be courageous. I can boldly move forward in my life. And it's okay that all these pieces of me are still here. I can love those as well, but I can still move forward. There's like a momentum, and it's beyond me. It's like something fueling me forward, and it's just like, okay, am I going to, you know, stop myself from this natural flow, or am I going to just allow myself to be taken with this flow? Yeah, it feels so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I don't think there's been a time experienced by humans that's been more powerful than this particular point in history of humans.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's unique.
Absolutely. Okay, so I want to try to get through the next few slides as quickly as I can. But before we do this, this is a huge piece that revealed itself to me. And it revealed itself to me when I was having that experience of spinning out of like spinning top, trying to get to that new place of what is that new balance point within me. And it was very, I mean, I woke up with this message. And so just like we're talking about these unified energies of masculine, feminine, Sophia consciousness, Christ consciousness, this is a unified energy, reconciliation and resurrection. In order for the resurrection to be able to be experienced, you must come to a place of reconciliation. And so however you experience that reconciliation, that making peace with, that serenity energy that you witnessed in the Pietà at the Vatican, that's the energy that allows the resurrection to happen. And even Jesus himself demonstrated to us the reconciliation when he says, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." That was the reconciliation point that allowed the resurrection to occur. And so this is a huge piece of wisdom that came through to me that I think is really important to speak to, because it may be happening within us in a way that we're not able to identify. Just like, you know, we learn to crawl before we can stand up and walk. And by the time we're walking, we don't even remember that we crawled. It's a part of the process. And so I'm bringing it into your awareness so that you can, over these next few weeks, see within yourself when, you know, when you're feeling the potency of this underworld energy, the quote unquote near-death experience, where has this reconciliation energy been able to show up within you? Because without that piece, we cannot go into the ascent journey. And I think that this is a piece that's been overlooked in the past as a critical point in the process. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about this Pluto return that the United States of America as a country is getting ready to have, and in fact, which we are already experiencing. So to be precise, Pluto in the chart for the United States of America is located at 27 degrees Capricorn, 33 minutes, retrograde. This is a huge piece to be aware of, because as a nation, we understood, the founding fathers understood, that people that have felt oppressed, have felt disempowered elsewhere, could come here and reclaim their sovereignty, reclaim their power. And so I believe that this retrograde energy at the birth of this nation is reflecting that the empowerment of this nation is happening within all of the people that come here and become citizens of this country. Now, remember that this Pluto Vision Quest is happening at the end of this month. Very, very close. It's at 26 something. What did I say back up here? 26:48, 26 minutes and 48, 26 degrees, 48 minutes. And so we round that up to 27 degrees. 26:48, I'm just repeating that. Look at that. Less than 1 degree orb of the Pluto return point. And when we're dealing with these slow moving energies, we look at an orb of up to 3 degrees. And so we can see that really we have been under the effects of feeling this upcoming Pluto return since last July. And it's only going to become more intense as we have these 3 activations of Pluto next year. The first one in February, the second one in July, and the third one in December. Now, what's interesting about these activations is that they each have their own energy. And I want to speak to you about these activations because we experience this in Saturn returns, 3 activations, and various other aspects that we have. What is this 3 activation significance? And so energetically, this is how I've identified each of these. With the first activation, it's like creating the framework for the foundation. And if you've ever seen a house being built, you see how they've got the wooden pegs in the ground and they've got the wooden pieces that are laid out to show you the framework, the outline of what the footprint of that building is going to look like. And so this first activation is really about identifying the boundaries of that footprint for that energy. Then the second activation is, okay, you've got the foundation delineated now. So you roll up the cement trunk and you got the cement pouring out into the foundation, and the cement's pouring in, and it's got to get into every nook and cranny of that outline that's been determined, and it has to be smoothed out. That and leveled and leveled. That's the energetic effect of the second activation. And then the third activation, the energetic effect of that is, okay, that cement is solid, it's dried, it's hard, it's level, it's ready to be built on. And so this is what we're going to be going through as a nation next year. And then what will happen after 2022 is through 2023 and 2024, Pluto will go through those last degrees of Capricorn and make an ingress into Aquarius, kind of dip its toes into Aquarius. Now, remember, we're talking about a 3-degree orb. So from 27 degrees of Capricorn, 27 and a half, we're looking at 0.5 degrees of Aquarius as the outside of that orb. So as Pluto is retrograding in and out of Aquarius to Capricorn over those next couple of years, we're still going to be under the shadow influence of those Pluto return energies. And that's going to be occurring until the end of 2024, when finally at the beginning of 2025, Pluto has, at the end of 2024, gone to 0 degrees Aquarius, the beginning of 2025, 1 degree Aquarius. We're outside of that 3-degree orb. And over 2025, it'll be going up to 3 degrees, retrograding back a little bit and going back up to 3 degrees again. But it's not going to come back to that 0 degree. And then in 2026, it's going to go from about 3 to 6 degrees of Aquarius and retrograde back and forth over that area. And then it's going to keep moving ahead. So this is why I say that we're really going to be experiencing this retrograde energy, this return energy, this Pluto return energy of the United States of America until up to 2025. This is important to understand because we're talking about another 3 to 4 year period where we're going to be having this experience. And right now, while we're in the Inanna Underworld, we know that Pluto is the Lord of the Underworld. We can imagine how intense that can become over the next couple of years, especially next year as we're having these activations. We're already experiencing the tension of that Pluto return now. And it's not just us as Americans that are experiencing it. Everybody around the world is experiencing it just by virtue of having their attention on what's happening in this country at this pivotal point of rebirth. Pluto return, rebirth. So what does that mean for us? Well, a couple of things I want to point out to you. This is the solar return chart for our country from July of last year until this year. Look at what's in its solar return chart. Right here, first of all, in the natal chart, look at who's standing right next to Pluto, the Magdalene. The Magdalene is standing right there. This means that there is a piece of the sacred feminine, right? That wisdom piece that was encoded into this nation, from the very beginning. And what we've seen in this nation is really how the patriarchy has taken over the power structures, and now how the feminine is rising and those power structures are falling. And look at what's happening in the solar return chart. Oh, and look, it's in its second house. Remember what the second house is all about. That's about the resources, tangible and intangible, that you value. And so in this solar return chart, where we're having, getting close to this Pluto return point, look at where Pluto is, 24 degrees. That's the 3-degree orb on this side of the return point. That's why I said since July 4th of last year, we have now been feeling the energies of this Pluto return. And look at who's standing next to Pluto. We've got Saturn, or Saturnia, the goddess of sovereignty. We've got Jupiter, the one who amplifies all of this energy. And we've got Pallas Athena, that knows exactly, step by step, how all of this is going to unfold, how all of this is going to manifest. And look at the relationship path that this country has been walking since last July. It's the Scorpio Gemini relationship path. This is the path of intensity. How do we embody this feminine energy that we call Shakti and allow it to move through us and be able to hold that energy? And we've seen the intensity of this path show up for us since last July. So this is a huge piece to be aware of. When July 4th happens and we have a whole new solar return chart for this country as it's having its Pluto return, I'm just going to give you a spoiler alert that the relationship path is going to be the Aquarius Leo path. And what is that path all about? That Leo, Aquarius, Leo path is the mastery path of relationship equality. What does that mean? No more power structures. We identify each other as masters that are fully embodied, fully whole, and we relate to each other as masters. No more dominion, no more submission. And where is the North, or where is, I think it is the North Node. I'll have to go back and look. No, it's not the North Node. Let me pull it up really quickly because I want you to see this because it's really important for you to see this. Oops. Oh, okay. The ascendant, the solar ascendant, is at 29 degrees Aquarius. This is a mastery place for freedom, for revolution, for liberation, for humanity. And look who's going to be standing right next to it, the natal quawar, creating and dancing this new reality into being. So this is going to be a huge new solar return path that the country is going to be initiated on come this July. This is really, really huge. And so, and you'll see here, this isn't the return chart, but you'll see that just before, when this is in January when I cast it, I believe, how much closer Pluto is to that return chart. I can cast one for the return chart that we can look at come July to see the differences in that. But there is a lot of stuff that is going to be resurrected in this country in terms of the balance of power that everybody will be able to experience on a global basis for the freedom of humanity. And that's what the message is that I want to share, because of the fact that when you're going through the dark night of the soul, when you're having the near-death experience, it's really hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And for those of us that are going through just this 2 months of the Inanna Underworld experience, imagine that on this grander scale when this Pluto return happens. So I just want to bring that into your awareness. Now, these are some things that came into my awareness around all of this. What came into my awareness is that everyone who's had a solar return from the beginning of this year, and those that will continue to have solar returns through the ending of this year, are going to have encoded in their solar return charts this Pluto return point for the United States. And so we are actually, again, remembering that Capricorn retrograde, we are all going to hold within us the codes, this embodiment of the Phoenix archetype in our charts. And as we go through this process together on a global basis all the way through 2024, like the spiral that goes up and up and up in a higher frequency, each of us will continue to have that Phoenix archetype that has been encoded within us upgraded over the next 4 years at our subsequent solar returns. And so by the time Pluto makes its final ingress into Aquarius at the end of 2024, the beginning of 2025, then that Phoenix archetype will be fully encoded in all of us, which shows how all of us as Americans, all of us as humanity, are intimately involved with the transformation and rebirth of this nation. And as this nation is rebirthed, it's going to be a domino effect. It's going to be the opening of a gate for every other nation on this planet to experience the same kind of freedom and liberation, to reclaim their sovereignty on a national level as well as on an individual level, where we step into our own power, we claim our power, we see each other as fully embodied sovereign individuals, and we work with each other and we encounter each other from this place of wholeness that we're talking about that will happen with the rebirth of this nation. So this is really important to be aware of and keep in the back of our minds, because as we're going through this Pluto Vision Quest that's beginning at the end of this month and is going to end in the metamorphic phase next January, we are coming closer and closer to that Pluto return point for the United States. The intensity of those energies through this vision quest, this embodiment of this code of the Phoenix archetype within us, is going to become more and more intense within each of us as we are contributing to this transformation and rebirth, not only in this nation, but on a planetary level. And then that entire next Venus synodic cycle, the Capricorn goddess who's taking the world stage, the goddess of sovereignty, she is going to be on the world stage as those 3 activations are happening on the Pluto return point for this nation, supporting everyone in being able to reclaim their power, to become sovereign beings on this planet. And so it's really exciting to see how this rebirth, this rising from the ashes, not only through this Inanna Underworld phase of this synodic journey, but going into the next synodic journey with the United States is symbolizing this rebirth, this hope, this renewal, this end of oppression. And of course, that's what Pluto in Aquarius is all about: liberation, no more oppression, freedom. And with that renewal, it's bringing this period of happiness and good fortune for the people on this planet, for this planet. So this is a really exciting time now to be aware of consciously as we continue through this ascent journey and the metamorphic phase of this Gemini goddess and into the next phase of the Capricorn goddess over these next 3 to 4 years, how much is actually being transformed within us, through us, and on this planet. Now,
That's amazing.
It is amazing. It's
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. I mean, go ahead.
I was just going to say that America, the United States, is just the battlefield, but it is the globe, it is Earth that is involved in this conflict and in this resurrection. It's not just us. And I think we've gotten a bit of a reputation over the years as being pretty full of ourselves, as a powerhouse. And I think that we need to get past that. I mean, we need to help ourselves get past that. We're not, an all-powerful nation. We're just the battlefield, but it's the globe. It's all of us that are fighting this battle.
Well,
all of us, yeah.
And let me point out to you why there is that perception. If you can look at the center circle here at the natal chart, what you will find, hold on a second here. Nope, this isn't the one. Go back to the slides. Let me pull you back out to the solar chart, the outer part. What you find that we have been experiencing since July of last year is, look at here in the solar return chart, Capricorn is intercepted and Cancer is intercepted. And so what that means is that the balance between these two energies has been broken. And that's what we've been experiencing in this country. We have no ability to be empathetic with the others, right? I'm right, you're wrong.
Right.
Therefore, I'm going to burn everything down, which is, of course, getting close to that Pluto return, right? The Tower card, burning everything down, and no ability to feel empowered to be able to stand in our sovereignty. But all of that is going to change. This has been a critical part of these energies being intercepted for this nation from last July through this coming July, to be able to step in this ascendant point at 29 degrees of Aquarius, having to experience this disempowerment for success, this disempowerment for being able to feel into our emotions and have empathy for anybody else but ourselves, is a critical point for being able to stand at 29 degrees of Aquarius and being able to see the world as a whole, humanity as a whole, a mastery point, 29 degrees Aquarius. This is about all of us, not just this structure and the people at the top of this structure, not this country and the people at the top of this country, all of us as a whole. So this theme of wholeness that we've discussed, that has become so clear to us through this Inanna Underworld journey in this Venus synodic cycle on the microcosm is a mirror for what is happening on the macrocosm as we come into wholeness on the macrocosm. And so that's the message of hope over these next 3 to 4 years that I would like for us as we're experiencing the intensities of these Pluto return energies, as we're experiencing the intensity of the Pluto Vision Quest that will be happening during this ascent journey, to be able to hang on to as we're ascending up through those potent energies. And so what we know now that the myth has been changed, right? Inanna's husband did not go into the underworld to grab her and bring her out because he is tainted with the patriarchy energy. It was Osiris, the aspect of the pure sacred masculine, who is the wise and compassionate leader that went down there, so that this reconciliation could occur between Ereshkigal and Inanna, so that they could be resurrected together and ascend together. And so in the past, in these ascent journeys, we've always looked at, well, what demons are showing up at each of these gates as we're ascending. We're no longer looking for demons. We're going to be looking for the resurrected pieces of ourselves that are showing up at each of these gates. And we're no longer going to be having these underworld experiences. Starting with the metamorphic phase, we are going to be having inner world experiences. What inner world? Within us, our inner world, transforming our inner landscape. Because when we transform the inner landscape, we are transforming the external landscape. And so through this ascent body, at each gate that we go through, because of the potency of those Sophia Christ consciousness energies that came through the Easter portal weekend, we're going to have to be finding that new center of balance that will be a center of balance at a higher frequency, at a higher dimension in each one of these energetic gates. And as we do that, I encourage us to assist ourselves in the process by working with the flower of life and working with the Kundalini activation. And so I don't know if either of you have yet looked at or gone through the first guided meditation that I put out there for enhanced well-being. The first 45 minutes of that is kind of a teaching piece where I talk about the spiritual tools that are incorporated in the guided meditation. And a big chunk of that has to do with the flower of life and with the importance of the Kundalini, bringing the leading edge intelligence online within us. And so we are blessed to have within our circle this gifted teacher, Leela, who does Kundalini dance and has been doing Kundalini dance for, I think, what did you say, 15 years, Leela? Your microphone is muted.
Yes, 15 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is an offering. This is not a must do. It's an offering to facilitate this ascension program journey as we're ascending into more and more of our multidimensional selves. And to facilitate that, I'm going to turn it over to Leela. She has a Kundalini dance opportunity that we can incorporate. Now, you know, it's going to be at a separate fee, and it's something that you can do as an add-on if you want to do it. I myself am going to do it because I have come to understand through this Inanna Underworld experience just how important working with the codes of the flower of life. In fact, I even bought myself a pendant that is a spherical flower of life pendant to wear. And the Kundalini activation I've done that a lot through my breath work, but using Leela as an opportunity to do it through the dance and to ground that. Remember what we said in on our group session, how important it is to be able to ground these energies, which is why Leela offered to do the grounding meditation. This is another offering to be able to ground these ascension energies in us and through us as we make this ascent journey. So go ahead, Leela, speak to this dance opportunity that you have available for us.
Well, that's still kind of being formulated. I think when we originally talked about it, it was unclear of what that was going to look like. So, yeah, there's a lot of different options that have been coming through. I'm definitely creating a program. With there only being a couple of us, I don't, unless some more people join for the ascent journey, it may not be possible just to do it like a group like journey just for the three of us. So
And that's fine. That's fine. We
yeah,
had talked about how you would have another Kundalini dance program that you were putting together that we could join into to make it
right.
economically feasible for you.
Of course, yeah. And the journey that's coming together is so much more than just Kundalini dance. So I'm just wondering if it's just the Kundalini dance you want, then we can talk more about that. I feel I wasn't fully prepared to speak of what the setting was today. So yeah, but I can just talk about Kundalini dance. Let's just do that. I think that will be more powerful than kind of what the exact opportunity is going to look like.
Okay.
So Kundalini dance is it works with the chakras. It works with sound, breath, and movement. It was, I say created very loosely, but it came as a transmission to my teacher, Leola Antara, who wrote the book that you can see right here. And I had the pleasure of meeting her in 2006 after being at a festival and having a Kundalini awakening, and then meeting a woman who was leading a guided dance that she had trained with her. And I had a second awakening that same weekend that kind of blew my whole circuits open, but not in a way that was, I think this is the thing about Kundalini. It's very it's feared in some way because it can move too fast when people aren't ready for it, because what happens is when the energy starts to rise, if there's any blockages in any of the energy centers, what can happen is that it can meet that, and it's like, when with a cork, there's a cork there and there's like a pressure that builds up. And so then when that uncorks, it can just shoot up, and it can be too much energy for people. And so through this system, I've learned it's really about, working with the vital life force energy, which is really what Kundalini is. It's our natural birthright to feel this in our body. And so when we tune into that and we work deeply with the energy of the Divine Mother, it's actually a sacred union practice. We work with Divine Father, Divine Mother, Earth, Sky, whatever those energies are for us, but it's about the sacred union of everything coming to balance in our heart. And so it's this place where we always start with the rising energy, because this is the place where we can move through the blocks. We can move through these places that we may be still holding wounds, or we may be still holding areas. Because if we look at the the chakras, they pretty much relate to every area of our life. When we look at the root, it's like, oh, it's money, it's work, it's our community, it's our family, it's our physical body, and the sacral, and creativity and sexuality, and it's like they build on each other. And within here, we have this opportunity to go deeper of what is the highest vibration that we have for this area of our life, for this chakra. And so when we use the dance, we use sound, breath, and movement to really move the energy and any of these places of stagnation, any of these places of blocks, so that we can come back into balance. Because really, that to me is the goal of life, is like finding that place of balance within ourselves. And so it's a really powerful journey to really come into your vital energy, to come into your full radiance. And that's what I'm really feeling about this ascent journey for me, is it's rising into your radiance. I feel a strong connection to the solar feminine in this, as we're rising and we're reclaiming all the parts of ourselves. We remembering all the parts of ourselves, ancient and future and present, all combined into one. And how can we really rise and really be fully embodied in that? And so, yeah, it feels really powerful, and I'm really excited. And as I'm talking, maybe there is an opportunity to do a monthly, just the Kundalini dance process. I'm really going to sit with that, because what I'm creating right now is a larger program that brings in the dance with a lot of the wisdom of the chakras, and with the wisdom of this Venus cycle, and with the wisdom of the feminine archetypes that really connect. Like I got a really huge download earlier this year that this was needing to come through. So yeah, it's exciting. There's so many opportunities to share, and it's, to me, the most transformational practice that I've done. I mean, I've also been doing it for 15 years, so I've reached a certain level of entrainment, and it's also allowing ourselves to be ecstatic, and not that everything's ecstatic, and that it is not always ecstatic, and that has to be the end goal, but it's also to allow that. What if I could be in my full expansion? What if I could surrender into bliss? Like, what would that feel like? To not feel that we have to control or change or worry about what our body looks like. It's like unrestrained in the most beautiful way, and not like, oh, I'm wild and I'm out of control. It's this place like of reclaiming that, of just being in this place of pure joy, pure presence of what is in this moment. And for me, I've just had some of the deepest experiences where that has, layered and layered, and really kept me in a place of alignment and wholeness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've had some spontaneous Kundalini activations, and then when I started getting involved with the breath work that I was trained in through Julia Mick, having even deeper experiences with that, it's just an amazing empowerment is really what it is. And it's in a kind of empowerment where you feel and know your connection to all that is. You feel the greatness of your own being, and it's absolutely magnificent. If it's something you want to consider, I really encourage people to get this book that Leola Antara wrote. It was fascinating for me because as I read through the first few chapters, her life story and her experiences and her wisdoms very much align with mine. I've had my own manifestation of those things, but very, very aligned with what I know and relate to. So it would be a good introduction to just tap into and see if it's something that you'd like to do. She also has some videos on YouTube that you can watch and participate with to get a feel for it, to see if it's something that you want to do. As I said, it's not a must do. It's an opportunity to really get the most out of this ascent journey. And for me, it's become clear through this underworld experience, the empowerment that comes by working with these flower of life codes and the Kundalini. And there's a whole piece on that, like I said, at the beginning of this meditation, where I got this huge download around all of that anybody can listen to. You can go to this link here. It's this particular meditation, the first guided meditation. It's free to everybody. And I encourage people to work with this meditation just to start feeling more empowerment in their day-to-day life. So it's an opportunity, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from Leela about how she wants to put that together for us, because I think it's going to just really support us tremendously as we're getting closer and closer to these Pluto return energies, as we're going through this Pluto Vision Quest, and as we're moving in through this ascent journey. going to be unlike any other ascent journey ever, because we are consciously reaching out to and claiming more of our multidimensional selves to be embodied at each one of these gates.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that, Leela.
You're welcome.
you.
I love talking about Kundalini.
So these are the aspects that are going to be happening when Gemini Goddess rises as evening star. And I find it fascinating. You'll see it here on the chart. All of these energies kind of clustered around here from 22 to 29, almost zero. That's like a 7-degree orb where all of these energies are falling into place. We've got Black Moon Lilith, we've got Venus, we've got Sedna, and we've got Mercury. So you see a lot is going to be communicated to us when this happens in Taurus, and it's going to be communicated to us through our bodies, these physical vessels, these sacred temples that we are embodied in. And so with Black Moon Lilith, we know a huge piece of that is that we are getting ready to step onto this ascension journey, which is about reclaiming our sovereignty, more and more of our sovereignty, more and more of our multidimensional self at each gate. So I love that piece is as a part of this activation. And then we have the goddess Sedna in there. And what's really groovy about that is this is a piece that I believe, and I invite each of you to tap into this, to discover how Sedna is resurrecting herself within you. Because in the myth, she's severely injured by her father as a part of this patriarchal energy. She ends up on the ocean floor. And now these limbs that have been horribly disfigured and wounded become transformed into seal flippers so that she can not only survive in this brand new environment, foreign environment, but she can thrive in this environment. And this is what's happening for us. We are no longer going to be in a quote unquote survival mode. We're ascending into this thriving mode where we have full access to all of ourselves, all of our greatness. And so how are these wounded places that were within us been transformed by the Sedna that resurrected within us so that we can be able to thrive as these beings that are now living on a 3D planet in a 5D plus consciousness. Huge. It's going to take new skills. It kind of reminds me of the Mars synodic cycle. When you leave the ordinary world and you go into the special world, you have to have, the old skills don't work. You get new magical skills to help you. The old allies don't work. You get new magical allies to help you. And this is really what's happening here. And look at this trine to Pluto that's taking place, that is supporting this ascension, this rise of the Phoenix from the ashes. And then we've got this square to Jupiter at almost 29 degrees of Aquarius that is enabling us, preparing us to expand into this multidimensional self, amplifying our ability to expand into and claim more of our multidimensional self, to be able to hold more of our multidimensional self in these sacred vessels, to be more incarnated on this planet than we have ever before in any lifetime had incarnated on this planet. This is a really exciting experience that is setting the stage for this ascent journey. We also see here another square between the North Node in Gemini and Orcus in Virgo. Orcus is that sacred vow, a sacred vow to the goddess that I'm going to rise above this lower mind, this left hemisphere, right hemisphere brain. And I'm going to allow myself to be able to tap into that unified source field and be able to create and be and move from that place, from the wholeness of who I am as a unified being. Very spectacular. We also have another breakthrough in consciousness happening here. This opportunity where Uranus is conjunct the sun in Taurus, and we've got Saturn and the moon in Aquarius. And so what is it that this breakthrough has to do with? It's about how we fuel ourselves in liberating ways, how we bring that liberating energy into our body to fuel our bodies, and how that allows us to experience the universal mother who over the next 9 nights and 10 days, we have this opportunity to engage with and be devoted to and have her show up for us, and how we manifest that universal mother through us for all of humanity, so that those that are not ready to make this journey or take this journey with us can be held in a way that supports them to be able to open themselves up to this exciting journey into their own wholeness. And then we have over here this opposition on the Cancer Capricorn axis, this path of family, home, and community, where, you know, the God Quawar of that sings and dances new realities into being is supporting the sacred masculine to show up in a way in our family, home, and a community that is a manifestation of the sacred masculine, and not a manifestation of patriarchal energy that has been identified as masculine, but is really a perversion of that sacred masculine. And so here we see that this tension, this opposition, which again, those energies come up at a higher point to manifest something at a higher frequency, is allowing now that energy of Osiris, the wise and compassionate leader, to be able to show up in these new ways of creating safe places for us on this planet that is served and supported by the sacred masculine and not dominated by the patriarchal energy. So this is a huge jumping off place for us to be able to make this ascent journey, a huge foundational place for us to make this ascent journey from, as this phoenix rises from the ashes. So, any questions about any of that? Any observations or ahas about any of that? Okay. So these are the big themes happening for the cosmic dance. Just want to point out here in July, after we have this new solar return chart for the United States of America, we're having a Venus conjunct Mars event. That's going to be really huge as a part of that new solar return path. So we'll discuss that more then. And here are the Vision Quest opportunities. So there are 3 opportunities for breakthroughs in consciousness that are happening at this May 3rd event. So you can pick one of them or all of them because it's a coming event, you can still feel into those aspects to kind of receive guidance, information, clarity on how those breakthroughs in consciousness may be experienced by you. And so you can share that with us. And then with this event happening in Taurus, you know, we can look at those luminary bodies, Black Moon, Lilith, Venus, Sedna, Mercury, and we can see, okay, how is their transformation going to be experienced through us when the Gemini Goddess rises as the evening star? So that's another opportunity that you can feel into and intuit into and see what kind of clarity that you receive around that. So our next support group is going to be April 24th. And our May classes will be the Sacred Feminine, when we go through that first gate activation on May 10th, Monday, May 10th. And then the 6th labor for the Fierce Protector on the following Saturday, May 15th. All right, any questions, any comments, any ahas about anything that we've discussed that's desiring to have a voice right now? Okay, so that's today's class. I know it's a lot. A lot,
Unusual.
a lot to take in.
I gotta go
Always.
outside.
Yeah.
I made I don't know if either of you are on Spotify, but I made a Navaratri playlist a couple years ago that has a lot of really sweet chants and songs dedicated to Durga, Lakshmi, and Saraswati.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Sounds really, really good.
Yeah, I make a lot of playlists, so.
Excellent. Excellent. That's good to know.
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
Well, as always, as this starts to sink in and you start to receive your own wisdom around all of this, feel free to reach out even before the group session if you'd like to. Text, email, call, whatever.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Well, thank you to both of you for everything that you shared today. It was really fantastic. I really appreciate it.
Yes.
Very rich.
Yes, certainly was. Is.
So sorry this ran over a half hour, but we really got into that closure piece on the Inanna resurrection point. I think it was well worth it.
I think so too. A big piece.
Good. All right, my dears, have a great week and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.